Hey, welcome. Today we're jumping into a really big idea, one that completely reframes how we think about the pursuit of happiness. It's this principle that suggests real, lasting well-being has to be built from the inside out, not just collected from the outside in.
Okay, let's start with a question that I think you've probably felt at some point, even if you couldn't quite put your finger on it. Why is it that as a country we can get richer and richer but not feel any happier? Why does it sometimes feel like things are actually getting worse? This is the central puzzle we're going to try and solve today. So, just take a look at this chart. What you're seeing here is a story in two lines. The top line, that's our gross domestic product, and it's just climbing and climbing. I mean, by that one metric, we're a huge success story. But then you look at that second line, the one that represents things like our social trust and overall well-being, and it's headed in the exact opposite direction. This isn't just a little dip, you know? It's a huge divergence, and it's a symptom that tells us something is fundamentally broken in the system. And that brings us right to what we can call the wealth-happiness paradox. This is really the core problem we're here to understand. The old ways of thinking clearly aren't cutting it anymore, so we need a totally new diagnosis for what's really going on.
You know, for decades the assumption, the one our whole economy's pretty much built on, has been this super simple formula. We produce more, which leads to more income, which means we can consume more, and all of that should add up to more happiness. On the surface, it sounds totally logical, right?
But here's the thing. That model is, well, it's incomplete. It works great when a society's focused on meeting basic needs like food and shelter. But the moment those needs are met for most people, the whole relationship just falls apart. And a wealthy country just pouring more money into the system doesn't automatically create more well-being. Wealth just isn't the answer.
So if more wealth isn't the answer, then what is? Well, this brings us to the real diagnosis at the heart of this whole idea. It's a concept called coherence. This, right here, is the missing ingredient. And embracing this idea requires a huge strategic shift. We basically have to move from our current wealth-first model, which is all about outside-in growth, to a coherence-first model that's focused on inside-out growth. It's really a move away from being driven by consumption to being driven by meaning.
So what on earth is coherence? Well, it's defined as a system's ability to do three things really well. First, to see reality for what it is, accurately. Second, to connect with others using compassion. And third, to act effectively based on that clear-eyed view. It's actually pretty simple. See clearly, care deeply, and act wisely. That's coherence.
Now this table makes the whole relationship just crystal clear. Look, if both wealth and coherence, let's call it CQ, are going up, you get sustainable well-being. That's the dream. But here's the kicker. If wealth goes up while coherence goes down, the result is instability, anxiety, and dysfunction. So the big takeaway is that wealth is just an amplifier. It takes the underlying state of coherence and just makes it louder. It doesn't create happiness on its own.
So where does the U.S. stand today? Well, according to recent assessments, the country is operating with about 62% incoherent dynamics. Think about what that means. Despite all our wealth and all our incredible capabilities, our lived coherence is low. We have all the resources in the world, but the system itself is just fundamentally misaligned.
All right, so that's the diagnosis. But what's the treatment? What's the cure? Well, this framework lays out a really clear three-layer prescription to restore that sense of well-being, and it starts from the ground up.
Layer 1 is the foundation of it all. It's about us, citizen behavior. This is where everything has to start. It's about us, as individuals, working to be more accepting of different viewpoints, prioritizing hard facts over the stories that just make us feel comfortable, and actively rebuilding a sense of shared humanity and compassion. Seriously, without this base layer, nothing else is going to stick. Building right on top of that foundation is the next level, institutional behavior. Our big institutions, government, media, business, they have to start modeling this coherent behavior. That means leadership that's actually connected to reality, real accountability when things go wrong, and a major shift away from just signaling virtues to actually solving real-world problems. And that brings us to the final, top layer. This is about the architecture of the whole system. We're talking about designing structures that reduce these huge imbalances of power, that make sure the knowledge we have actually gets turned into action, and that ensure our policies are deeply connected to the real lived experiences of everyday people. So, when you put all of that together, what does it all add up to? Well, if we were to actually do this, it would mean we have to fundamentally change how we even define what it means to be a successful nation. We'd have to change the entire scoreboard. This is a pretty stark comparison. The shift would mean we stop defining success by how much wealth we can accumulate or how much status we can signal. Instead, we'd start measuring success by our level of coherence, our contribution to the common good, and the integrity of our relationships. Just imagine a society that celebrated integrity more than dominance, or one that valued truth more than persuasion. That's the goal.
All right, so this all sounds great in theory, but the billion-dollar question is, how do we actually get there? What does the practical path from where we are right now to a more coherent future actually look like? Well, there's a pretty clear roadmap called the National Spiral Repair Pathway. Step 1 is recognition. And honestly, this is the hardest part. Just looking in the mirror and acknowledging the problem without getting defensive. Step 2 is stabilization. We have to lower the emotional temperature and get back to a shared set of facts. And only then can we really move to step 3, actively rebuilding coherence across the board.
You know, when you boil it all down, this whole massive shift in thinking can be captured in one powerful sentence. The goal isn't just to have more stuff, more wealth, more power. The goal is to function better, as individuals, as communities, and as a nation.
And that leaves us with this one simple, potent takeaway. Stop chasing happiness directly. Instead, focus on building coherence. Build that alignment between seeing reality, acting with compassion, and being effective. Because if you can do that, happiness will follow.